I've got a lovely bunch of coconuts, dee-dee-dee-dee. There they are, standing in a row. Big one, small one, some as big as your head.
My final problem with Final Fantasy XII's story has to do with the English localization. Needless convolution does not equal sophistication. Final Fantasy XII has received much praise for its voice acting simply because it sounded good. In truth, the voice acting sounded good, but the translation of the game is barely decent and does a shitty job of illuminating the plot. Much of the dialogue is so vague, the meaning is obscured behind multiple layers of ambiguity. Here's an example.
Release valves open. The nether sites are critical. Auxiliary show clear.
Put an end to this. They have already surrendered.
Let us make of this an offering. One he might see even now. Vena, what say you?
Now it is clear from the context of the previous scene that the Bujerban resistance has not surrendered, and is in fact preparing to do battle with the Bahamut. Does Larsa have any idea what's going on? Next up, who is Vayne referring to when he says he? I've come up with at least 4 possibilities. His dead father, Emperor Gramus, the recently deceased Dr. Cid, the invisible Vena, or possibly Garuin, leader of the Acuria. Even within the context of this scene, this is never made clear. Let us continue.
Once they see that there can be no surrender, the resistance must needs come at us with all they have. We will answer their attack head-on and destroy them, before the eyes of all Rabanastre.
If you do this, the people will only grow to hate you the more.
And should I pardon them, they will only rise up yet again.
I do not believe they would. In cooperation lies our hope. You are mistaken. You are wrong, brother.
And if I am? You had best find the strength you need to correct me then.
Notice the ambiguity of this last sentence. What does Vayne mean? Is he implying that Larsa is weak? Is he suggesting that Larsa is verging on treason and will need to incite an insurrection to counter Vayne's rule? Or is he aware that Vena is manipulating him and is actually wanting Larsa to correct him? Meaning, killing him. None of this is ever made clear, and Vayne's voice actor is so deadpan that we can't discern his meaning. Final Fantasy XII makes a habit of ambiguous dialogue like this, and the plot suffers because of it. Also, remember that scene where Lord Vayne makes his entrance into Rabanastre as the new consul? The more I watch it, the more it just confuses me. In the context of the rest of the story, the only purpose it seems to serve is to show that Vayne is in Rabanastre while the Arcadian Senate plots against him. Everyone hates Vayne, so he gets up and gives a pretty speech, and now everyone loves him. At first I thought this scene was to set up that Vayne was a decent guy, but he wasn't really. So then I assumed that this whole scene was to show that Vayne has a silver tongue, like he's using everyone for something. But throughout the whole rest of the game, we never see his manipulation explored any further. Wouldn't it make more sense just to show everyone hating Vayne? It would lend more credence later on when Ash and the Resistance attack the palace and attempt to assassinate him. It's like the writers were screwing around with ideas that they later decided to never use, but left in because they were too lazy to change anything. Vayne even talks about how much he admires the city's Galtean architecture, but this doesn't make any sense since the end of the game shows Vayne hating Galtean culture and the legacy of the Dynast King. That's what drives him to make war with Dalmasca. Finally, moving on to the music. Prior to development, series mainstay Nobuo Uematsu left Squaresoft as composer of the Final Fantasy series. As a result, 12's soundtrack is terrible. That's all I have to say for the music, except that there actually is one rough gem in the mix, and you'll hear it every time you encounter a boss in battle. Final Fantasy XII's version of the classic Prelude is decent too, but that hardly counts since it's been around forever and just about anyone can remix an old track. Then we have the gameplay. In all seriousness, this was the only thing about the game that wasn't hopelessly broken. When I first saw the trailers for the game and the new combat system, I blew a couple of heart fuses because of how much of a turn-based fanboy I am. But then, when 12 actually came out, the battle system was the only thing the whole game I even partially liked. I'm not saying the combat is good, but it shows promise and has an element of innovation. The battle system brought new ideas to the table. It's really just too bad they screwed it all up with something called gambits. You see, the game uses gambits to control the parameters of AI in combat. By adjusting gambits, you can set up when your characters will perform certain actions during a battle. Since the battle system is too complex for you to dictate all of your characters' actions while in the course of battle, the gambits are a must. There's only two problems. Number one, you have to constantly rearrange your gambits in preparation for every major battle, and this means countless hours spent performing tedious and boring calculation. Which sounds more fun, playing a game or programming AI responses? Can anyone say micromanaging shit system from hell? Number two, once you actually configure your gambits, there's nothing left for you to do except watch the game masturbate the exciting sections itself. The game literally forces you to do all the boring stuff, while it plays all the fun stuff itself. That just doesn't make any sense. If that's not enough, several series staples have been hopelessly ruined. I'm probably not the only one who summoned an Esper for the first time and watched it stand around while I died. Another problem that isn't mentioned enough is that quickenings, the only useful means of taking down bosses, have a high mana cost and nearly always consume all of the character's MP. Since quickenings directly compete with the MP used for healing abilities, casting a quickening nearly always risks the player's imminent and horrific death. As a result, the biggest problem with 12's combat engine is one of balance and piss-poor execution. The battle system is functional, if only just barely, but the game just isn't very fun to play. Now, a lot of other people have talked about how awful the license board system is, since it doesn't show you where the license you're needing actually is. You literally have to buy a whole group of licenses and hope to find the right one to equip the item or ability you want to use, and then restart the whole game and repeat the process. Finally, a number of people also complain about how the license board essentially advances characters' communal genericness. That wouldn't be so bad if the game didn't rely on battle stats to forge character distinctiveness. When the only way you differentiate between your characters is through their role in combat, taking that away just reveals how incredibly awful your cast of characters really is. In this game, it's the kiss of death, but since this game already has 120 umpteenth million death smooches already, this is actually a pretty minor issue. So I've noticed that everyone that likes Final Fantasy XII always justifies their endearment to the game by mentioning the most superficial aspects of it. Like, I don't know, the graphics, the fact there's a lot of crap to do, the voice acting, or just the lack of random encounters and turn-based battles. To this, I simply offer one final scene to justify my hatred.
I'm Captain Bosch von Ronsenberg of Dalmasca! Don't listen to Ondor's lies!
You'll probably never know how much effort went into this review. I don't know if I've mentioned this already, but I've played through this game a total of 4 times now, and even drafted a 30-page summary of the plot. I've spent hours and hours watching and rewatching cinematics on YouTube, and reading everyone else's reviews of the game. If you're mentioned down below, it's probably because I've watched something of yours that convinced me to do this review, or else I found one of your videos informative in some way. Thank you. Hopefully you've enjoyed these videos half as much as I did making them. I hope you found them informative, and with any luck, I'll be able to make more in the future.